So MIKETZ starts off with Pharaoh's dreams. Good. Pharaoh has his dreams, and he doesn't know what they mean, so he calls for his interpreters. None of their interpretations satisfy Pharaoh. So the Sar HaMashkim says, I met this guy in jail. I've forgotten about it. I don't really want to talk about it, but he's really good at dream interpretation. So they bring him. He interprets the dream, and Pharaoh says, "I like that. That sounds good." Vayitav hadavar b'nei Pharaoh v'nei chol avadav. Great. Ever wonder why? Hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened yet. Other interpretations have been offered. Clearly, none of them were sufficient to justify the understanding for Pharaoh. But why did he take the word of this prisoner that he pulled out of jail from a hated land of Canaan? Why did he suddenly trust him? And he looked at him and said, "Yep, that's exactly right."
He dreamt the interpretation also.
So that's what Chazal say about the Sar HaMashkim and the Sar HaOfim, but that's not what they say here, because that would be very, very strange in this particular case. Because
then why would he ask?
Yeah, why do you ask? Right there, it's that they dreamt the interpretation of the other person's dream, and that's why they did it. But no, it's very, very weird for him to dream the interpretation of his own dream. He doesn't need Yosef then. So how does he know? How does he know? What happened? That he just yep, that...
Only on Nebuchadnezzar. He's saying, tell me the interpretation. I already know it. The way Nebuchadnezzar knows what he dreams.
So unlikely. I mean, it could be, right? No, none of the Mepharshim really say that because it's very weird in this particular story. It doesn't sound like that. But good, what is it? So what does he do? Give me possibilities.
It just kind of feels right.
Good. Right, one possibility is exactly that. Correct. Right, one group of Mepharshim say, it just worked. Nechama Leibovich has a nice summary of it, and she says basically there's the group of Mepharshim who say truth resonates. That's what it is. There's not much more to it. That all the other ones, he heard them and he's like, it could be, could not be. It doesn't sound compelling. And then he heard it and he's like, it just resonated. The Radak sort of goes in this direction. He said, he said, ki karov moda pidaron lachalom. He looked at it, he said, that makes a lot of sense. It just sounds right. It just fits. There's not much more to it. Now he adds a second possibility is okay, but still. So he says maybe it's also ki shamu misar mashkim kasher patar lem kenaya, meaning he knew from the Sar HaMashkim that in the past he had successfully interpreted dreams, and now he heard this and it made sense. So the combination of factors. Okay, but that's.
Yeah.
Right, something along those lines. One possibility is, look, it just made sense. Why are you asking? I don't know. The truth resonates. It made sense. No one else's made sense. It was the best he got. Right. Great. That's one possibility. What else?
You could say that
Well, let's go to the Nebuchadnezzar example. Right? What would you learn from the Nebuchadnezzar example? What's possible there? Right? What we learn in Nebuchadnezzar's case with the dream interpretation? How did he know? Right, how did he know that who was telling the truth?
Oh, because it was a bad one.
Because he already knew the answer.
Well, no. Remember what did he do? There were two, but in one of them he said,
"Tell me my dream."
Tell me my dream.
Right.
Meaning, one way that you do it is you set a trap, right? And if you can get past that hurdle, there's something you know and something you don't know. You really do need interpretation, right? Remember, that's what's going on in the Nebuchadnezzar. He doesn't know everything. He knows what the dream was, or possibly. That's a machloket, but at least maybe he remembers it once he hears it. And then whoever can figure out his dream without him ever telling them, so he'll buy the interpretation as well. So there's another possibility that sort of happens here. Not in the entirety, but this is several versions. Take this, Yoni Grossman really develops it at length, which is the possibility that if you follow it very carefully, the dream as recorded by Pharaoh and as reported by Pharaoh later are not identical. And that's a intentional trap, because how is he going to know? The answer is the person who can figure out that he didn't record it faithfully. They didn't record it faithfully, rather. So he says, you look at it, here's his actual dream. Right, 7 good cows came up. And then the 7 bad ones come up, and they stand next to them. And then the 7 eat, the 7 bad ones eat the 7 good ones, etc. How does he actually report it? Vayomer Pharaoh el Yosef, Chalom chalamti ufater tov ani shamati alech lemor tishma chalom leftor oto. He said, I had the dreams, and he said, this is my dream. V'hinei min hayor olot sheva parot briot basar v'yifot toar v'terena ba'achu v'hinei sheva parot acherot olot achrein dalot v'rot toar ma'od v'rakot basar v'lorid yichayina b'chol eretz mitzrayim lo roa v'dochalna parot arot v'rao sheva parot rishonot v'abriot. And then they eat them. What's missing? Did you note? What's missing from the dream? It's almost the same, but there's one detail which is missing. That there's a moment at which they don't eat, they just stand next to each other. Shuni Grossman takes, again, there's certain mafarshim that go in this direction, that maybe there was these nuances, but the way he takes it is, he hid this. In the dream report, he says, it sounds like the cows get up and eat them. In the dream, they get up, they stand next to them, and then they eat them. Lamai nafkamina. Right? Why does that matter?
Because when they stand next to them, it's like a comparison.
So the way Yoni Grossman takes it, which is a nice interpretation, which is, what's the interpretation of Yosef?
7 years.
Let's go to the interpretation. If the dream was as Pharaoh reported it, then should there be any way of stopping the famine? No. It's inevitable. What is the difference of that little detail, Vata'amodna Eitzel HaParod? That there's a moment at which they coexist. Right? There's a moment at which they coexist. Meaning, right? So Yoni Grossman says, how did he know? He left a slight nuance. He made it sound like in the dream as if the fat cows were eaten right away by the skinny cows as soon as they entered the scene. But in fact, in the original dream, there's a moment between those two, a moment of coexistence, and Yosef's not just interpretation, his suggestion that there's a way out of this tells Pharaoh that he understood that there's a moment at which this is not inevitable, which means that he got past the misreport to the actual dream.
So he's like Daniel.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly right. Right. He's like Daniel, that he can manage to, not quite as intense. In Daniel, he has to figure out what the dream was in its entirety, but he says the way he figured it out was by leaving traps where if Daniel can parse that and get past it, then that'll be okay. Other Mefarshim say, you know why he believed Yosef? Not this fancy, but simply because Yosef is the first one who says, here's the dream and here's what you can do about it. Because, why is that important? Because that explains why he's having these dreams. Right? Meaning he's giving a rationale. It's not just, the truth sounds good. It's not just, you got through the details. It's, he can explain to me why I had the dreams in the first place, which is a madrega that no one else did. He's telling me that God is sending me these dreams for a purpose, and here's what I'm supposed to do. Right. That explains another group of questions in the Mefarshim, which is, where did Yosef get the chutzpah to say to Pharaoh, oh, by the way, you should find something, right? He didn't just interpret, he gives him political advice. How did he get the chutzpah to do more than he was asked to do? So several versions say, no, that was part of the interpretation. Right? Part of the interpretation was, Pharaoh, you're getting these for a reason, which means that part of interpreting the dreams is advice. And it was that shift of mentality and that double question, not just what does the dream mean, but why am I getting them, that led Pharaoh to realize that Yosef is really onto something. The last one I'll say, that again, there are other nuanced ones. This is actually perhaps the oldest position, but it's hidden away and no one really knows it. It's found in the Ibn Ezra's commentary to Mishlei, quoting Rav Saadia Gaon. I think it's Ibn Ezra quoting Rav Saadia Gaon, but it's from Rav Saadia. I think it's Ibn Ezra who quotes him. I'm pretty sure. And why is it in Mishlei? Because it's given as Rav Saadia Gaon's example of what does it mean that Chachamim speak in Mishalim. So he says, oh, by the way, it's like, what Yosef does in Mitzrayim. And then it wasn't basically quoted by anybody until the 20th century when Reb Zaydel, I forget his first name, Moshe, I think. Moshe Zaydel came up with it independently of Versace Gaon. And he said, no, you're totally, you got it wrong. This is along the lines of the trap, but it's much more Daniel-like. Meaning, this is going almost full Daniel, right? What's the key to Daniel? How does Nebuchadnezzar know that Daniel gets it right?
Because he tells you.
Because Nebuchadnezzar doesn't remember the dream or doesn't tell them the dream and he figures it out. So Rav Gaon said that's what happened here. It's not that he didn't tell him the dream at all, it's that Pharaoh completely got it wrong. He completely got it wrong. Because everybody else looked at the dream and said, those are dreams, plural. And Yosef said, no, they're not. No, they're not. The reason you experience them as two dreams is because you woke up in the middle. But they're one dream. Chalom echad. And then he pulls a really fancy move. And he says, you know what he said to Pharaoh? You think Chalom echad just means, you woke up in the middle, or they have the same meaning? He said, Pharaoh, you misremembered your entire dream. What is this narishkeit of cows eating cows and wheat eating wheat? That's not what you dreamt. You dreamt cows eating wheat. That's what you dreamt. Right? You split it in your mind. But think back, Pharaoh, that wasn't your dream. You saw fat cows eating grain and becoming fat, and skinny cows eating wheat. There was no cows eating cows. There were cows eating wheat.
Right.
And that's how I know this is about being able to eat and fending off famine. And then he went and interpreted from there. And Pharaoh said, hey, that is what I dreamt. It was cows eating wheat. Oh, and the interpretation is that there's about to be a lot of food, and then there will be fat, and then there will be thin cows because there won't be much food, but there's a way of surviving because the skinny cows will have some wheat and they'll be skinny, but at least they'll make it through. Hey, that makes a lot of sense. And he said, how did he figure out that Yosef was telling the truth? Because Yosef made the dream not complete nonsense and reminded him what his dream actually had been, which made perfect, complete sense, where there were animals eating wheat and not wheat eating wheat and not animals eating animals and none of that.
Where do you see that in the Pshat?
So the Rav Gaon says that's what the words Chalom Echad, right? Chalom Echad who? Is he said, not it's one dream with one message, is that you've messed this up in your head completely as remembering different factors and making this into two dreams, and it's just not true. It was one dream. Now, you may not buy this. I'm just saying these are different interpretations that are offered, but like I said, this is, if anything, the oldest that we actually have, because it's from Rav Gaon, which is, hundreds of years before the other Mefarshim that say it, which if nothing else is interesting and does a lot to solve it, whether it's right, I don't know, right? All these are different interpretations. I want you to notice at least this is the question you have to ask in the Parsha, which is, how did Pharaoh know that Yosef got it right? So these, I think we just did 4. Did we do 4? There may be more. But those are 4, I think we did 4 interpretations to explain how it is that Pharaoh was convinced that Yosef was right.
Cool. Thanks.
Okay.